Welcome to Close Listening. I'm your host, Zach Morgenstern, joined as always by silent co-host Ludwig von B. And today we're going to be talking about The Police's fifth and final album, Synchronicity. So this was an album that had been vaguely in my consciousness since a classmate at a college party mentioned it about 10 years ago. But I was thinking about it more recently because Rick Beato, who's an ear trainer and former music teacher, and I don't know, all kinds of things. He posts these analyses of rock and popular music with a really theory-attuned perspective. He posted this video called The Age of Low Information Music, and he was bemoaning how repetitive the chord patterns are in modern pop music. And he compared this to a lot of rock music from the 80s and 90s that used more complicated chord patterns. Now, I found this video provocative because on the one hand, I don't particularly listen to modern pop, but I also don't think of the music that I listened to from back in the day as being more technically advanced. So it really felt like I was missing out by not listening to Sting and the Police more closely. So I decided to get my hands on Synchronicity and see what the songs were. So right off the bat with the first track, Synchronicity 1, something sounds slightly off about it. I looked it up. It turns out it's in 6/4 time. So for those who don't know music, the most common signature is 4/4. That's a quarter note is 4 beats per measure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4. Occasionally you might get a waltz. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. But a lot of the other rhythms that you might hear in some jazz songs or some more experimental pieces, like songs by the Police, they're not as intuitive, and you really have to listen to the music and go, oh, this sounds slightly different. I first became aware of the idea that the Police do these when I listened to Sting's country song, I Hung My Head, which was covered by Johnny Cash. Johnny Cash's version is beautiful, but I believe that one is in 4/4, whereas the Sting version is in 9/8. You wouldn't think you'd need to do anything that musically experimental with a country song, but Sting did it. So listen to that track. But anyway, I'm talking about Synchronicity, which is a very different track than Hung My Head. And supposedly it's based on this theory by Carl Jung. And so to react to this album, I tried to do a little looking into the Jungian theory, but this also isn't a whole video essay here, so I didn't really try to understand it. And that's unfortunate with this because just looking at the surface level explanations, it's hard to tell if it's just a smart, insightful observation about how our minds work. There are coincidences, and these coincidences can have meaning put upon them. So this one YouTube video I saw explaining it says, if a family member dies and on the same day you ordered a shirt or a dress and it was supposed to be blue, but for some reason they sent you the black one, that would be a coincidence, but it would have meaning because of the cultural significance of the color black. And that coincidence would imprint on your mind and possibly affect your dreams and your psyche. So interesting theory. I like it. I think what throws me off is it was hard to tell from the various short summaries I was reading whether all Jung is saying is that these coincidences can implant on our brains and influence how we see the world, or whether he was actually reading something more mystical and superstitious into it. Anyway, you don't have to understand the theory deeply or be superstitious or not superstitious to appreciate the Police song. It's just this interesting rhythm with direct, simple lyrics saying our sensory experiences are connected to our dreams and to the spiritus mundi, the spirit world. Track 2 on the albums is called Walking in Your Footsteps. You sort of hear one sound first and then realize it's another, and that you hear these hand drums, you hear a kalimba-like sound, so you're thinking African music, but then you realize it's a drum machine. It's looping, so you think very 80s, 90s techno music, not the sort of rootsy, traditional African sound you think the song is going for. So it's two things at once, and musically it's fine, but because of the loopiness of it, it gets kind of boring for me. But the lyrics for this one are actually pretty cool. So it's Sting talking to the dinosaurs, and you realize this has to do with his anxiety about nuclear war, which came out in a solo song, Russians Later. And it seems like what he's saying is, well, if the dinosaurs died and they didn't have any faults, or at least the Brontosaurus, he clarifies, he talks to a plant-eating dinosaur later. He's like, well, imagine what's going to happen to us. We're actually inventing our death. We're inventing the atom bomb. So if the dinosaurs didn't make it, how the heck are we supposed to? The next track on the album was called Oh My God. I didn't really pick up what the lyrics were when I was listening to it. I just thought it had this cinematic, kind of noirish atmosphere with the combination of the bass and the synthy sound. It has cool, disorienting moments, especially with how you hear the saxophone at the end with really only drums behind it. If you look at the lyrics, it's sort of a familiar theme of a problem of evil. So if God exists, why is there all this evil in the world? Except these lyrics aren't directly talking about evil and violence. They're just more talking about alienation and the fact that so many people are unhappy and seem unable to help each other. So it is worth saying that the Police is a band. It's not just Sting under another name. And there are 2 tracks on the album that are written by his bandmates. So one of them is Mother. It's by guitarist Andy Summers. I wonder if one of the reasons Sting went by Sting is because his name is Gordon Sumner, whether they thought they couldn't have both Sumner and Summers in the band. But anyway, it's a screamy talk singing kind of song. And it also has a weird signature. This one is in 7/4. But the way the lyrics are written, it sounds like a much simpler style of music, 12-bar blues, where the formula in 12-bar blues is you repeat the same lyric twice and then go up and end the verse in a third way, but it all sounds kind of repetitive. So the lyric goes, well, the telephone is ringing. Is that my mother on the phone? Telephone is ringing. Is that my mother on the phone? So it's a very charismatic song. It's more of a novelty song than a great song, but that's only if you recognize that difference. It's certainly an enjoyable one. The next song on the album is called Miss Gridenko, and though the vocals are by Sting here, it is written by drummer Stuart Copeland. It gave me a kind of similar vibe to Mother, even though I think the rhythm in this case is a conventional 4/4, but there's definitely something disorienting about it. So I believe Copeland has said, and from what I've seen online, lots of people read it as a description of a sort of 1984 style scene where Ms. Gridenko is some low-level bureaucrat in an authoritarian society, and she's fallen out with them. But the lyrics are so minimal, you could miss that. And I honestly thought it was just like about a school secretary or something the first time I was listening to it. But yeah, the song again has a unique charisma to it, and it's not the Beatles throwing Ringo a country song to sing. Summers and Copeland took full advantage of their chance to make a contribution writing-wise to this album. So the next song on this album is Synchronicity II, and this is the one that Rick Beato really praised. And it's the one that sounds most quintessentially Police to me, I guess, based on the limited Police that I had listened to. So the rhythm here, again, is more conventional. It's not a weird time signature, but what they are doing experimentally with this one is sort of moving the key around. I'm not sure you'd ever quite call it a modulation, which is, when the song gets higher, or I don't know if there are any songs that modulate lower, but it uses these chord changes that are just slightly unconventional. So when it goes, Daddy grips the wheel and stares, it's going A, B minor, and the jump from the key the song is in, A, to one note higher in a minor key, not that unconventional, but the way the B minor is played, it sort of sounds like a B major, which makes it a bit weirder. And then you jump to a D minor, which is also not usually in the key of A. I'm going by a chord chart here, so I'm hoping they got the original key right. But the point is, it's just a lot of subtle subtle chord jumps that mean the song doesn't follow the typical patterns of the keys. It doesn't follow the typical patterns of popular music in terms of what chords can go with what key. So again, this song is about Jung's theory of synchronicity, and again, it doesn't matter how you understand that theory and how much of it you accept. So it tells the story of a man who's really down on his life. There's all this chaos going on, both in the boringness and some truly tragic things. And if this is a movie like Joker, the man might lose it and become a dark figure himself. But the way it works in this song is that there's something rising up from the dark Scottish lake, which people have read as meaning the Loch Ness Monster. So the man is just grumbling inside and the monster is forming else in the world. And synchronicity means the man is making a connection in his head between himself and this monster, whether he directly becomes the monster or not. Anyway, this is, I think, the strongest song on this album, very memorable and also very musically innovative. Now, I called that one the strongest song on the album. However, the one that's the unequivocal Sting and Police classic is Every Breath You Take. So chord-wise, it actually sounds, like a doo-wop song. Except, it's synthed up. So even though it's fairly simple musically, because it's taking that sound from one age and bringing it into another age, it does sound more mysterious. So I believe Sting said this is a song he got up and wrote in a sweat in the middle of the night. And on the one hand, it was a song inspired by his divorce. So it's about real human feelings of unhappiness and possessiveness and jealousy. But Sting also noticed right away that the lyrics as they are written are quite disturbing and sound like they could be about a police state, not about a relationship. So it's a sort of song that exists in that discomfort. You're not supposed to actually want humans to have those kind of feelings while also realizing they could be exaggerated versions of real human feelings, and I guess in a few cases, not exaggerated. The next song on the album is called King of Pain. And this one, I sort of went back and forth with my feelings about it. At times I was frustrated with how loud the drum machine was. And, as I mentioned before, with Walking in Your Footsteps, I feel like there can definitely be too much drum machine. I guess I'm not really an 80s creature when it comes to my musical tastes. There's also a lot of choral singing. It's not just straightforward it's not just, Sting's voice alone, plain and simple, which can create an interesting effect, but it's kind of frustrating because you wonder when is the voice of the strong gonna belt out strong and powerful. That said, I love the shifts in dynamics in the song. I think the actual chorus when he's singing about being the King of Pain is really effective. And at the very end of the song, Sting does show off that he just has a straightforwardly strong solo singing voice. So actually years ago, I went to see a concert where Sting and Paul Simon played together, and I told my parents about it afterwards. And I said, Sting still got his amazing big voice in his 60s. And my mom was kind of confused. She said, I don't think of Sting as having a big voice at all. And she's right. On a lot of songs, Fields of Gold, for example, he sings in this weirdly muted way. But at the same time, if you hear the right live version of a song like Message in a Bottle, he has an absolutely belty voice. So I guess he's someone who, for artistic reasons, chooses to mute his voice a lot. And sometimes that's a good choice. Sometimes it's not. But King of Pain, it's sort of weird to listen to at first, but the actual underlying music is simple enough that once you get used to it, it can quickly become a favorite. And this song is also sort of playing into the synchronicity idea. It's Sting wanting to translate his feelings into sort of real world images. So there's this part that goes, there's a fossil that's trapped in a high cliff wall. That's my soul up there. There's a dead salmon frozen in a waterfall. That's my soul up there. There's a blue whale beached by a springtime ebb. That's my soul up there. There's a butterfly trapped in a spider's web. That's my soul up there. So it's very dramatic, but you can't just hear these as metaphors. You have to hear this through the lens of synchronicity, that Sting thinks about these sad things, and these sad things map onto his actual sadness, to his experience of divorce at that moment, and they take on a new intensity and they blend together. The next song is called Wrapped Around Your Finger, and this is another one that at first was a bit too 80s for me to fully appreciate, but the 80s thing comes with its good parts. So there are two synths playing at the beginning, and we think of synth as one thing, but it's so many sounds. So these two instruments that are unmistakably electronic, unmistakably synth, but they're playing together, creating these two different melodies, two different sounds. I liked it. And so even though this song is quite slow, I think you sort of have to close your eyes and sort of let yourself flow with it. The way I imagined it is that you're a ribbon agonizingly being wrapped slowly around this metaphorical finger. The chorus involves some choral singing, just like King of Pain. And when listening to this, again, I close my eyes and I imagine this wedding ring shining in the distance, but because of the distance, it feels kind of ominous. As for the lyrics, there are some references to mythology and literature in there that make it quite biting. Mephistopheles is not your name, but I know what you're up to. It's just the same. So on the one hand, the singer wants to compare his partner to the devil. And on the other hand, he's like, okay, I know you're not the devil. I know that's ridiculous, but also kind of not ridiculous. So again, maybe some more synchronicity going on in there, just maybe some self-reflection on Sting, that he's someone who loves a lot of literature, both classical and obscure. So he wants to think in these grandiose terms, but he also has to remember to pull his thoughts back to earth. The next song on the album is called Tea in the Sahara. It just has a nice relaxed sound compared to everything else on the record. And it's kind of a relaxing yet unsettling title. So on the one hand, you think of the joys of having traveled, and with travel comes relaxation, and you get to drink a nice cup of tea, but I guess you have to hope it's at night, because drinking tea in the Sahara in a desert, a hot drink, that sounds horrible. Anyway, this song was supposedly inspired by a novel Sting has read, I know nothing about. It's called The Sheltering Sky by Paul Bowles, and Sting said he identifies with the characters in this novel because he sees himself as a traveler, not a tourist. So I guess someone who tries to identify more deeply with the places you go. But I think this novel is ultimately about a sort of unsatisfying wait. And, can you ever really enjoy your tea in the Sahara? I mean, I'm sure there are some North African cities on the border of the Sahara. I don't really know how the geography works in that part of the world, but it's sort of this interesting, simultaneously unpleasant and unsettling image. And the last track on here, which I believe is not on the vinyl, it's only on the cassette and CD releases, is called Murder by Numbers. It's sort of a funky jam, not necessarily as strong a way to end the album than Tea in the Sahara, but I guess more of a conventional hit. And I guess just throwing some numbers into your song is a great way to make it catchy, whether it's ABC, as easy as 1, 2, 3 by the Jackson 5, or 1 + 1 is 2 by Lou Bega, which I talked about weeks ago. It's just a song, it's a sort of light murder rock song, sort of glib Tarantino-esque, do with it what you will. It's a groovy way to end the album, if maybe not as interesting as some of the other songs on here. Anyway, there's a lot interesting going on compositionally, and I don't know if you could quite say philosophically, but Sting does some deep imagining with this record. And I want to thank Rick Beato, I guess, for pointing out how profound some of the composing in this is from a technical level, because on this channel earlier, I've had some discourse with the comments about whether good music and simple music can be the same thing. And this was specifically in regards, if you want to watch my video on Animals, where I critiqued it for not having enough lyrics in proportion to the music, and the music just being so long and instrumental that it sort of lost its meaning. And a lot of people say, hey, if you want hits, go listen to hits, but this is real art. But I think Synchronicity shows you can write songs that basically sound like hits, but have a lot of underlying complexity and experimentalism to them. Music is made to be enjoyed, but that doesn't mean there's not a lot of room within that enjoyment for creative genius. So didn't like every song on this record, but I liked enough of them that I can see why this one is a true classic, and I will keep listening to it going forward. I'm Zach Morgenstern. This is Ludwig von B. See you next time.